Hi there, I'm Dr. Myrdalis Diaz-Ramirez, and this is the Design Your Physician Life podcast, brought to you by our Max Seller Mastermind, a personal and professional development programs for physicians who want to learn entrepreneurship and launch their businesses. Today, we have an amazing guest, Dr. Alex Cahana. He's going to be talking to us about entering Web3 as a physician. Are you ready? Let's go.
Welcome to the Design Your Physician Life podcast, where you will get excited about being a physician, learn the tools that can help boost your success, and great tips from successful doctors. Join us to unlock the keys to an amazing physician life. And now, here's your host, Dr. Myrdalis Diaz-Ramirez.
Hey guys, welcome to this episode of Design Your Physician Life. I'm very excited to have here Dr. Alex Cahana. Welcome to our episode today.
Thank you, and thank you for having me.
Well, let me read a little bit about you because you have such a wonderful, interesting bio. We're fellow pain doctors, you and me. You've been a little bit more ahead of what I've been doing, and now you're doing all these wonderful works. So it says that you specialize in Web 3.0 transformation in emerging markets and developing economies. You're the founding partner of something called Impact Rooms, and we're going to hear all about it. You're a blockchain and healthcare expert. You also work on the Global Task Force for Healthcare, DAOs, and Tokenomics, which we're going to be defining. And you've been working in many areas throughout the world. So you don't only have over 25 years of clinical experience, you're now consulting dozens of Web 3.0 early stage companies, local and state governments, and you believe that transforming citizens from health service consumers into health and wealth producers. So once again, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
So there's a lot right there to discover in your bio, but before you went into all this area, there was a young Alex there who thought about becoming a physician. Who was that?
Well, that was a young Alex who was a fifth generation of doctors. So I really didn't have a choice. I think they gave me a stethoscope and said this is a pacifier. So I always knew that I would be.
What's the arch of you coming out through the vagina?
Exactly. Exactly.
Wrap around you.
I've been called always a doctor. So, if you say Dr. Cahana, I don't know if you're talking about mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, or my sister. So a fifth generation of physicians. And I want to say that my journey into becoming a pain physician was after spending over a decade in being in the military, and saw pain in the battlefield, and said that is something that really needs attention to. So went through anesthesiology, subspecialized in pain medicine, concentrated on interventional pain medicine and in palliative care, and then after that wandered, like you said, in this intellectual anarchy through ethics and philosophy and technology. So I'm looking forward to our conversation.
That's awesome. And, one of the things I say, being a fellow pain physician, obviously I'm biased, but I think one of the most honorable things one can do is really relieve pain. And the way that we see our patients, I've also taken care of military patients, it's your personality changes, and it's not only, and it's what took me to pain management, was not only about that patient, the patient's experience, it was also about the whole family experience, how everything changes. And I'm very honored for all the patients who have allowed us to take care of them. And then, you being in military before then, how what an impact it is in the lives of our patients.
Well, I think there's something very unique in basically seeing all the failures of the healthcare system. I have, throughout the tens of thousands of patients that I saw through my career, I think the only one that I sent to a psychiatrist was because they were happy that they had pain. So it's really about existential suffering, and we kind of use the same language for physical acute pain and its other dimensions of the biopsychosocial, dimensions of it. And to your point, family and community is extremely important. And I always say, and because of pain, it really impacted the way I look at it, that the opposite of health is isolation. It's not health and disease, it's isolation and pain. The phenomenology of pain was really being isolated. And so really, if we believe that, then the journey back to wellness and well-being is through community and connectedness. And so the way I explain it in this most simplest of terms is that you take the I out of illness and you put we, you get wellness. And that's what pain medicine really taught me, is that you cannot seriously talk about mental health and physical health and planet health without talking about financial health and the conditions of living.
That's a wonderful way of putting it. I never thought about illness and wellness related together. That's a great way of putting it. And that's what we've been doing for our patients for such a long time. One thing that you didn't tell me in your story yet is like you were born to a stethoscope, you were born into medicine, Dr. Cahana, from the beginning. Where was the computer there for the young Alex? When did the computer curiosity start?
Well, I think, I'm from an old generation of analog. I remember, I was not even very young when I got my first computer. I think that the understanding that the digital is an important part of our life was when I realized that it's part of how the world is working, that you cannot really move on in an analog form. And for me, the way I explained it was that the internet at the time, and then turning out to the web, is actually the largest collaborative platform in human history. And so to your point of the community, really understanding that the internet realizes this idea that none of us is as good as all of us. And so that you can create communities, and not only in real life communities, but virtual communities and hybrid communities, that is beyond democratization of knowledge, but also creating some swarm intelligence or collective intelligence that is the type of intelligence that is going to help us go through all these difficulties. And I think that what COVID taught us, and because we all agree that this, whatever this is not working, is that we really need to work together, that there's an erosion of trust, there's an erosion of the quality of information and data in that computer or digital world, and that has infringed on our possibility or capability to cooperate, collaborate, coordinate. And if we really want to continue and solve the challenges that tomorrow provides us, we have to work together.
You bring quite a few concepts that are important concepts. You talk about data and you talk about trust. And right now, I remember when, as physicians, the patients started to ask us. Actually, it was in my fellowship for pain management that Google was released. And then I remember that transition for patients coming to us with Dr. Google, right? With the answers from Dr. Google. And now we're having some other answers from systems that people really don't understand how they are created, how they develop these, the data that they're producing, but yet they're coming with solutions to us. And then you have the data that is being used to produce that. You have the technology and the algorithms that are being used to produce that information. And then there's going to be new levels of trust happening just because of this, that are things that we haven't even really touched or realized in the general health forums that we see. What do you think about data and trust in that concept, in that environment?
Well, I think it's an excellent question, and I think I can answer this in a couple of ways. One is, of course, I'm sure our audience are physicians. What drives us to science and what drives us to medicine is really an innate curiosity. We're really curious on how do we work, how does this work, and so there is that part of us that searches and researches everything, which kind of is almost philosophically, you say, do we really discover anything? The fact that we discover something, well, it did exist before, we're actually just now knowing it, but it's not as if we invented it. So I think that there's this kind of like very interesting concept of what is research and development and discovery. I think also there is part of, at least for me, being in medicine is connecting the dots. There's kind of like detective, being original, especially in pain physician that sees always after they've seen, all the other specialists, and, the best doctor is always the last doctor. So, it's how do you solve these puzzles, this kind of like Sherlock Holmes of, haha, I knew it was porphyria and the person shouldn't have received 27, laparoscopies. So there's that aspect of it. But I think that the fundamental being of a physician, and it's very humbling, is the idea of being ready. In other words, being ready in two meanings. One is being prepared. And we know that we have long terms of preparation, right? We go through our undergrad and our grad, and then afterwards our residency and fellowship and post. It's forever. It's like one day I think I said, out of my 59 years, I think it was like 52 I was in school, it was something to that extent. But it's not only being ready in terms of being prepared, it's also being willing. How much are we willing to listen, willing to actively listen, to employ our empathy and nuance our interpretation. And that's where data comes in, because data, of course, is the bedrock of knowledge. We want to know its veracity, we want to know its finality, we want to know its how we containerize it, but also it's the heuristics behind it, it's the interpretation of it. That's why, I'm not so much worried about artificial intelligence. I'm more worried about natural stupidity. So, this idea of how do we base ourselves on those bricks of knowledge or data that creates knowledge in order to get to that wisdom that every single one of our patients is looking for. And I can tell you that if there's one thing that I learned in pain medicine, and I'm sure that you feel that too, is that not only sometimes not doing is doing, but I think that not all pain is bad and not all pain relief is good. And that is really something that this ability to nuance really elevates the idea of what humans can build out of simple data.
And talking about data, you bring some points, when you mention like data is personal, private, and valuable. And there have been already some wars, some legal wars happening about all this data protection. And there are also concepts about, should we really develop these models? Just talking about patients using their data for that, how much should the patient be aware of what's happening? Are the consents that we have these days enough to cover for these other models using their data? And then you say that your data is yours to access whenever, whatever, and whatever reason. Are we really going to be able to do that?
Well, I hope so. I think that I was once asked, if you have to go to Congress and ask them to pass one law, what would it be? And if I had a magic wand, I'd be in the elevator with the king of the world and say, okay, there's one thing that needs to change. That thing would be the ownership of our data. That right now, unfortunately, we live in a world where not only legally the data doesn't belong to us. I think in the United States, besides New Hampshire, all the other states' data does not belong to the user. It belongs to the system that created it, or that it hosts it, which is a horrible idea. Ruling says that they're obliged to give it to us. Whether they fulfill that obligation is secondary. But I think that the key of our freedom, the key of liberty and dignity is based on self-owning the data. And why is that? It's because I am my actions. And my actions are captured by data. Continual, non-continual, semantic, non-semantic, it doesn't matter what kind, but I am generating, as we speak, data. And when a third party uses it, loses it, or abuses it, they take a piece of me. And so self-ownership of data is enshrined in human dignity. And this supersedes the financial benefits from it. So, for example, we're talking now, and we're generating what, I hope is valuable, something that has value. So at the end of this conversation, there will be a file that will be hosted on platform and on a cloud, and someone will own it, not you. You have access to it until the person that owns it will decide that that's enough. You can have a copy of it, but that copy is not yours. It'll be, still on another platform that is hosting it. And you don't have access to that value. And it's not only that it's not fair, but it has also economic and behavioral repercussions. Because why are we doing this right now? Well, because, I like you, you like me, we think that it's valuable, we want to talk, to our community, we want to educate, but that's not serious macroeconomic considerations. And so when we contribute to the valuation of the very, very wealthy platforms that host our data without being paid for it, that has macroeconomic, repercussions. We're not getting away.
Do you think, because you say that we should earn the benefits from our data, and do you think that is it going to be enough that we might have just, democratization of the use of these type of tools? Is that enough? Or do you think there should be like some more in-depth compensation for the...
Of course, it's all about incentives. Okay, so I, for example, have a choice later after we're done, either to eat blueberries or to eat a prime rib steak. Now, if I'll eat the blueberries, I was promised that I would live another 15 minutes in 30 years. That's a very weak incentive. I will go for the steak. But if I was, for example, paid, I don't know, 50, 100, 500, 1,000, it doesn't matter. But I would be incentivized. I would say, sure, I don't mind eating the blueberries. So there is monetary and non-monetary ways to motivate, to reward people for healthy behaviors, for positive behaviors, for behaviors that contribute to not only their personal health, but to the community, society, and planet health. But we're not motivated to do that. We're not geared enough to do that. I would argue, on the contrary, that we have a system that values us or pays for us to do things that are not helpful. And actually the things that we do most, like, for example, this conversation, is pro bono. And so what I started to say before was that the macroeconomic implication of it is that when you're not paid a wage to do that, then you don't have money to spend. And my spend is your income.
Yeah. Somebody's paying, right? And somebody's spending, always.
And so we're excluded from economic activity, and this is where tokenization comes in, because the word tokenization, and we might agree that that's a poor word and we should call it something else. We should call it brownification because we're getting brownies from it. Doesn't matter. But every file, every data ledger, every piece of information that's created digitally, we can attribute value to it. And that is a token of our appreciation. And we can say in digital form that access to it will provide you whatever. Goods and services at discount, goods and services at a premium. It will give you hard cash. We can have a whole conversation about the idea of theory of money. Is like, what is really this thing of colored paper that has pictures of kings, queens, slave owners, and colonizers, and that's valuable? It's not attached to any world asset. It's printed out of thin air. It is debased and devalued at whim. What does that even mean? Indulge with me for 2 minutes. I'll tell you a story that I tell that just to show
Let's go.
How silly that is. So I was on a visit, in Ivory Coast, and I was talking to one of the state officials there, and And I was feeling that the conversation is going, because they'll lull. And so I said, let's gin it up. So I asked my cohort, I said, what is it that is on the mind of the average Ivorian? And he said to me, well, money. I said, why? I said, because if you have a lot of it, you can do, and if you don't have a lot of it, you can't do anything. I said, that's interesting. It's because I always thought that cash is trash. And everybody's kind of like, where's Cahana going with this? And I said, let me tell you a story that may or may not have happened. Okay, so I went to your 5-star hotel, to Ivotel, right? And I asked for a suite, and they said $100. So I put a $100 bill on the front desk and went up to the room. In the meantime, the receptionist, he ran to the pharmacist and said, here's the $100 that I owe you. The pharmacist said, thanks. He ran to the butcher and said, here's the $100 that I owe you. And he says, oh my God, I never thought you'd pay. So he goes to the lady he met the night before and paid, here's your $100. And she ran back to the hotel and said, here's the $100 from last night. And she put it on the counter and left. In the meantime, I went down from my room and said, I don't want the room anymore. And I took the $100 and left. What just happened? There's no GDP, there's no production, no consumption, but magically 4 people are free of debt now. It enriched them. How does that work? What silly game are we playing that defines the haves and haves not? And I think that once you start to understand that economic activity represents social policies that modify the way that we behave amongst ourselves, that changes the way we look at the world, you start to understand that there are other ways of doing this. And so, of course, the gentleman said, so Dr. Cahana, do you think we should use Bitcoin? I said, I don't think anything. What I think, however, is that we need to find a different way to value people. And that's really the answer. How can we, as physicians, value our patients? How can hospitals value us? You're talking about burnout and all that. How can they solve the moral injury besides giving us not enough green paper money?
You would say that talking about health would be the wealth, right?
Exactly.
Health, time. That's it.
And we're the ones who understand this the most. We're the ones who understand this the most, because the minute that we're stopping healthy, then the regret starts. How many
patients don't we have who are billionaires and millionaires, and they come to us as pain doctors? They've seen, as you say, we're the 10th doctor they've seen. Nobody had examined them before. We help them, and it's maybe too late for them. And there goes. Doesn't matter. Nobody will take the millions with them. You see them suffering there.
I think the point that I'm trying to make here is that we live in unique times where technology itself can change the way that we interact with our patients, can change the way we interact with ourselves. So imagine, okay, that, we have created Myrdalis coins. Okay, everybody that comes to your listens to your podcast or engages with your podcast and all that gets a Myrdalis coin, an M coin. And so, well, what am I going to do with it? So I don't know. We can define. You can negotiate with people around you and say, I can bring you business. You can go, for example, to libraries and get, certain assets at a discount. You can go and buy books. You can go and have access to, you create some type of economic activity that people will want to be part of this. Do online courses, learn some things, something that pertains to pain medicine. I don't know. But you create a reward system that attaches people to you and you to them, without being dependent on these platforms that don't allow you to participate in that economic activity. And
you've thought about this a lot, and you've thought about this a lot about tokenization. And then you have thought about an idea of a law, if that ideal law was passed, which was, give people access to their data in some way. Ideally, in which way you think would be most effective if you had it your way to make that token for people in general? 1, 2 things that you think.
Well, I'll talk, since we are listening to physicians, I'll just say, as physicians, for example, 3 things that come to mind. One, for example, is credentialing. We know how expensive credentialing is, how much time we're losing, how much it costs us, how much. Imagine that all your data sits on a digital passport. For that matter, we'll call it a token. We'll call it a non-fungible token because it's yours and it can't be exchanged with anyone else. And we would use this token to move from hospital to hospital or country to country. And there are already solutions that can do it. Now, the fact of whether the state of Oregon or the state of Washington want to use that, that's a separate conversation. But the digital capabilities already exist. For example, you want to publish. What's the business model now to publish? I'm going to take all my creative IP and put it in an article, pay many times to a journal for them to publish it so that they can make money on it. How ridiculous is that? You'd explain that to a 5-year-old. That would say that doesn't make sense. And that is why there are many that are doing decentralized science. Or, for example, if you're a researcher and you can't get funding because you know that if you have to go to an NIH, the acronym not invented here, and you're not a friend of the program director, or you're not exactly doing the molecule that the drug company is paying the people at the FDA to, and you want just to do your thing, how do you crowdfund this? How do you work with your patients who have this special orphan disease that no pharmaceutical company is interested in because the market is not big enough? There are ways now in technology that we have to acquaint ourselves with. That's the issue here. Not if we can do it or not, is that every problem that every listener right now is thinking in their mind, they can call me. They can reach out to me on LinkedIn. I will point them out to a decentralized, public, crowd-based solution that is already dealing with it. We have to change the current model that has convinced us that we have to live like this. There's no other choice. There's no other choice. That's the way it is, and it's simply not true.
So from now, like you're mentioning, even like a grassroots movement where you're, starts with the physicians in this case to be able to do that process. Do you know of particular societies or associations who are really doing that right now on behalf of both patients and physicians, that physicians can say, you know what, I want to work with this group, or I want to explore what they're doing to see how I can contribute?
So the short answer is yes. I will not say the names now because, if you say you love vanilla, then all the chocolate lovers will say, well, why didn't you mention me? But the short answer is yes. Some of them I know of, many of them I work with. Anything that has to do with unionizing doctors in groups, all the way to research and development. They're called in general DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, which is just simply a fancy way of saying this is a virtual community, just like Facebook groups or Reddit or WhatsApp. The difference, of course, is that you don't have one person on top administrator that can shut you down because it didn't conform with community guidelines. I put stuff on LinkedIn that is taken off because someone thinks that it's too offensive, that you can't talk about, certain things about our government or centralized organizations or the way things work. So there is, the short answer is that for anything that any of the listeners are thinking about, there are companies. All of them, by definition, are early stage. All of them, because we're on this dawn of a new chapter, of this Web3 chapter, where we own our data and we're able to do things. So just another example, think about medical insurance, okay, health insurance. Nobody loves their health insurance. Maybe, I don't know, some unions or some municipalities that still have some Cadillac generous insurances, but in general, what do people think? It's too expensive. It doesn't cover what I want. And the money that I put in is not working for me. There are ways using this type of Web3 technologies where you can congregate as a community, where you can define what are the things that are important for you to be covered, do a real price discovery on supply and demand, not this, I decided that it's going to be $1,000 a month, whatever. And as money is put into a treasury or what we call a liquidity pool, some of it is allocated to pay for members and others are allocated to work in order to generate yield. But if you don't know that these things exist, right? If you don't know that if you're burned out, there are ways that a hospital can create their own coin and they can reward you with those internal coins that can give you access to gym, to food, to groceries in the neighborhood. You know, hospitals are anchor institutes. They can talk to all the restaurants on the block or all the groceries around and say, if I will send you people your way, I want them to get 30% off. Gyms and therapists and all kinds of things that we can do. But you need leadership. You need to think out of the box. You need to know that there are solutions like that. And the problem is that physicians, we learn so much about, the subatomic particle that is inside the mitochondria that will change the ribosome, that will do this, whatever genetic, I don't know what, that we don't know how the world works. We don't have digital literacy. We don't have financial literacy. We're interested on not only why the things are the way they are, but how is it the things they are? When you say, give me this, give me a swab, how did it get there? What's the supply chain? What's the cost? And so I think that the newer generation really needs to apply themselves, the younger generation, and start to understand how this world works so that we can integrate those solutions that are out there.
So one of the things that we have is that we have a mastermind for physicians precisely to the entrepreneurship. And entrepreneurship to us is not only about the business aspect. We start with all the things with the vision, mindset, changing that from medical mindset to entrepreneurial mindset, taking care of ourselves, the finance, and all these things to make it last long. If you had a group of physicians, let's say 10 physicians that are anxious to learn about this, which steps would you tell them? You know what? I'm working with the Web 3.0. I'm talking here about tokenization. I'm talking about global blockchain ventures and all these places that you can find things. Which steps would you tell them to take in order to get involved right now? In which areas you think they should start to get involved right now? Because there's so much to do, but there's also priorities.
Of course.
And there's not only priorities, there's things that are going to be everything's so quick, moving so quick right now, that as physicians, we need to take this area at least. What would be the steps that you would tell, this group of the younger generation to take?
I think, first of all, it's a great question and it's a very personal question. So I think that the first step is to identify what really interests you. You can't impose on someone who's not interested in numbers to be interested in numbers. Just fine. We can talk about what is absolutely necessary for everyone to know, like reading, writing, and math. But in general, you can't impose someone to seriously be interested in something that simply they're not interested in. So you have to identify what is the one or two things that captures, your interest. I think that for me, at least when I look at my journey, what I had to force myself when I stepped out of medicine is, I would say, one question and two domains. The two domains that you have to absolutely increase your literacy is digital literacy. You have to understand technology. And you don't have to understand technology in the sense of technologists, but you have to kind of understand, okay, so how does the internet work? How does AI function? What is blockchain? What is privacy preserving technologies? What is cybersecurity? You have to kind of start to at least have vague concepts of, the equivalent of saying, okay, the heart is here, the liver is here, the spleen is there, those are the kidneys. Kidneys have something to do with urine. I don't know exactly. So there has to be digital literacy. And the second is to understand finance a little bit, macroeconomic principles. We live in a world of inflation. What is inflation? What is supply and demand? What is deflation? What is printing money? Why are we printing money? Understand the forces behind, not have political opinions about it, but just understand how is it that there are stakeholders that are posting record earnings in insurance companies and pharmas, and it couldn't be better for them. And at the same time, healthcare is the number one reason for personal bankruptcy, and that 60% of Americans don't even have $400 in their account for a medical emergency. To understand the forces that are driving the current healthcare system, which is not broken, by the way. It is doing exactly what it's designed to do. So as we're developing digital literacy and financial literacy, then we're able to understand the future digital economy. And that's really the most important thing here, is that physicians have to understand not only how patients' data, but also how their work integrates into a digital economy. And why is that wonderful? Because in the current model, which is a commodities economy, where resources are finite, the mentality is a win-lose. There's only so much gold or so much oil, so if you have more, I have less. But if we work in a digital economy, in a data economy, that's infinite. Data is the only resource that when you split it, its value increases. So that is a abundance mindset. That is a win-win mindset. And so again, I'm not suggesting that doctors need to get interested in health insurance if that's not their thing. I'm not suggesting that doctors need to get interested in NIH or FDA or federal research and all that if that's not their thing. But you cannot not know anything about it. You cannot know what it means when you say to a patient, take this, and think that a generic and non-generic has the same repercussions on their life. And I think that we have been very good in being interested in the science, if you wish, the biology or the biopsychosocial, and we've been very good at understanding social determinants of health and diversity, but we've completely neglected medicine as an industry. And if you look at healthcare, which represents 20% of the GDP, that is something that you cannot not know anything about. And so this is a long-winded answer to anybody who's interested to expand their horizons. First of all, expand in what interests you, but be curious. DYOR, do your own research about it, and be original. Be original. Connect the dots in a way that nobody connects. I'll give you an example. Someone asked me from an investment firm here in New York City, how is it that a doctor, is talking to us about investments or talking to us about market analysis. Where'd you learn all this? Were you at Wharton? Did you go to Harvard Business School? I said, no, I just was reading on the internet. I didn't do anything. Which is not true, because why? You know, you and I, we've seen tens of thousands of patients. They always say to us three things, right? They say, doctor, believe me, my pain is real, right? They say, don't look at me like this because 3 months ago I was fine. And they say, if you only give me OxyContin, everything will be okay. And you have to start a whole motivational interview to advise them into what you think is the right holistic approach. Now, what do you think is happening with all these startups and early growth companies? What are they saying to me? The same thing. Doctor, my product is real, right? Don't look at me like this because before I was an entrepreneur, I was the CFO of I don't know what. And if you just write me a check, I'll be fine. And I have to convince them that actually that's not the way. So doctors are a unique opportunity where they have a lot of soft skills, a lot of not only intelligence, but emotional intelligence and social intelligence that they can bring into whatever new chapter or additional chapter or expanded self they want to bring into, provided they develop their digital intelligence. You cannot just have IQ and EQ and SQ. You need DQ, or if you want digital economy intelligence, DEQ, which I'm making up. But that's really what is necessary.
That's a great answer. You know, we have a lot of physicians who go through life, they retire and they have no basic concepts of things that are socially acceptable and learned by our peers when we were from high school through college, and then we just split there going to medical medicine and they go to, you know, the real life, right? We're just still studying. And to your point in terms of finances, it's really dire. We have tons of physicians, we've seen them, they have clinics, they have businesses, and they really haven't learned the financial concepts. So just learning the basic concepts of technology before moving forward, that's but we have to have the curiosity. The other thing is that there's a lot of, you know, and I've seen this for some years, there's a lot of other institutions, other type of businesses that seek physicians just because of the way that we can process information. And you don't have to necessarily know exactly everything as long as you have the curiosity and the basic knowledge, as you say. So right now, I know there's a lot of this artificial intelligence and a lot of the institutions and type of services that you've mentioned who are looking for physicians. If we tell the physicians where to go, where are these people besides LinkedIn? You know, I found you on LinkedIn. So if we tell them besides LinkedIn where to go, which types of meetings should they go? Obviously, what gives them passion? Anything in particular, any particular one that you would recommend for physicians to go there and offer their time and look for answers, seek for answers?
Yeah, I would say it's a great question. I would say, first of all, whatever you think you should do, then don't do it because it's obsolete. This whole way of how we seek knowledge in medicine, going to conferences, going to, you know, meetings, it is very labor intense, very capital intense, and gives almost zero, if not, you know, any practical yield. In order to be on top of the pulse and understand what's going on, you need to have a social media presence. You have to be on Telegram, you have to be on Signal, you have to be on Wire, you have to be on WhatsApp if you're old. You know, you have to be where the pulse is and communicate synchronously and asynchronously with everyone. So I'm not saying if there's a meetup tomorrow that brings in physicians in burnout, and I don't know what, and you're interested in going, sure. You might meet someone. But again, that is not a good use of time. And time is really what we don't have as physicians. You need to, first of all, articulate to yourself, what is it that you want to know? And what you want to know is usually contingent to what is the thing that you want to say. What is your tagline? So, for example, it took me a while, of course, to articulate it, but then I said, okay, what do I want? I want to blockchain healthcare and healthify the crypto space. That's what I want to do. That I think that healthcare as a system is failing unless it'll be decentralized. So decentralized health, if you wish, fine. Web3 health, fine. Health 3.0, blockchain health, choose whatever flavor, but there has to be a system redesign, both in healthcare and in technology. Which brings me back to my previous point that you brought up, is that doctors who are running clinics need to understand finance in order to run. Yes, but, because what doctors are doing right now is they're trying to game the system. They're trying to learn tricks for them to survive in an unsurvivable system that will always run against them. And whenever they figure out something, the system is going to change, and then they have to come up with that is not neither intellectually satisfying or sustainable as a strategy. What you need is to rethink, is to say, okay, whatever this is not working. And you have to understand, what is it that is bugging you? There might be people that the whole idea of trust doesn't bug them. There might be people that think that this whole lack of intercooperability, not interoperability, or intercooperability doesn't bug them. That's fine. But in order to start to expand yourself, you have to articulate what is the thing or the things that are bugging you. And once you understand that, then you can start to think about solutions that most of them will be technological. Most of them will be technological or digital and financial, but also think about the why. And that's the problem. And as doctors, we think so much about the how and the when and the where, that we don't think about the why. Why is it like this? Why are we making these choices? Let me give you an example that I give to small business owners that are just, their head blows off when they hear that. Let's say that you're a small business owner and your business costs you $100 a year. And last year you made 200. So with 100 you pay, right? Wages and the lease and amortization and equipment and whatnot. And you cash in $100. You do it whatever you want. I need to go to vacation. I need to buy me another car. I need to buy me a third home. I need to go on a yacht or a private, whatever. Okay. Now I come to you and I say, I have this AI thingamajiggy that instead of $100 now is going to cost you $50. I'm like, sure. Only take it. Of course. So now it only costs you $50. What are you going to do as a business owner? Now, capitalism doesn't say what you need to do. You can say, well, if it only costs me $50, I'll fire half of the people and cash up $150, even better. But that's only one choice. The other choice that you had is to say to your workers, you know what? Everybody that's human is going to work in the morning, and everybody AI robots are going to work in the afternoon. And why is that good? Because then the humans in the afternoon, they can be with their family, they can write, they can read, they can code, they can develop things for your clinic that will make it even better. Be poets, be sculptors, painters, better people, it doesn't matter. But the reason is that in scenario one, those people will say, AI ruined my life because I got fired and I couldn't pay my mortgage and my kids' college. And the other scenario will say, oh my God, I love AI because it made my love better. And why was it? Just because of the decision of the head honcho. And so you have to understand these things. You have to think about the why. Does that extra greed? How many, pairs of pants do you need? How many lunches do you going to eat in one day at the expense of making your community more resilient and better? And that's really what this is about. It's about the why. And I'm saying this to doctors because we all went into medicine with good intentions. We all went in medicine because if we really wanted to make money, we would not go into medicine. That's a very poor choice. You've been way better off going into finance or real estate or something else. But we have that in us, this care, this, to your point, this community, this social contract that we have with those around us. So we have the emotional intelligence, we definitely have the IQ intelligence, and some of us have this social intelligence where we understand community importance. We need to complete that with the digital and economic intelligence to really come up with original, interesting ideas.
That's a wonderful point. We've actually discussed that here locally, and with the use of AI, making sure that we're using it for the good, right, for the better, and taking care of your team, taking care of your community, your families in that way is a great way of starting to use it and do it. As we reach the end of our conversation, I do want to thank you. I would like you to tell people how they can specifically reach you if they want to talk more. And I'm hoping that they come on Friday at 1:30 Eastern Standard Time so that we can talk maybe a little bit about that concept of blockchain, which we didn't have time to cover today, or something else. We'll see. Will be a surprise. So where can people connect with you?
I think the best way is professionally through LinkedIn. You also in LinkedIn, there's my email posted, so you can reach out to me by email. But LinkedIn is the best way. You can read my posts, so that kind of gives you a glimpse into what's going in my head. And I am an eternal optimist. I think that one day we're going to laugh about all this. It's not going to be today, but one day we're going to laugh about it. And I really want to thank you for this opportunity to share provocative ideas, new ideas, and I hope that it inspired at least some of the listeners to just understand that we are the authors of our life and that reality is reality, but it doesn't force us to do anything that is wrong or evil or ineffective. And the idea to do things that are helpful and hopeful is just a choice.
Exactly. You can design your physician life. You've said it. Thank you for being here. We'll see you then.
Thank you.
Well, guys, that was it for today. I hope that you learned a lot as I did myself with Dr. Cahana. You can actually reach him through LinkedIn as I did, or also through Impact Rooms. Please join us. We have tons more in our podcast. We also have in our Maxcellular Mastermind YouTube channel. So check that out. Also check out our website, maxcellular.com, where you can learn more about how you can also get involved and launch your business as a physician entrepreneur. I'll see you then. Have a great day. Bye.
Please remember that Physine is not providing specific financial, medical, or career advice. Our only intent is to stimulate your appetite for growth by sharing our experience and those of our speakers, coaches, and guests. Your personal growth and success will be unique to your circumstances and your hard work. We sincerely hope you enjoyed the show and look forward to seeing you next week.